Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. And for anyone watching on the Knicks Film School YouTube channel, no, I am not sitting on a toilet. My producer and podcast partner for today both commented that it looks like I'm sitting on a toilet in a bathroom. No. I am sitting, however, on a pillow, which is on the floor in a what could best be described as a nook, which is memorable only because this is where I delivered the post-game pod on the day that I thought Tom Thibodeau was going to get fired about 2 years ago. That didn't happen. Many good things have happened to the Knicks since then, including a very nice win on Christmas Day. And here to talk to me, easy for me to say, about it, is a man who has had a journey himself this season. He is the voice of the Giants for pre and post games. Your long misery is almost over, sir. John Schmeelk, how you doing, bud?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if you were on a toilet. I do tend to send people there when I talk to them for long periods of time, but and the Giants season kind of belongs there too with how it's gone. So I get it. Yeah, two games to go here, John, and then we have 4 months of draft talk. Good times.
Can I get the Giant stuff out of the way first, and then
sure.
We'll talk Knicks. And for anybody, I mean, John's been on the pod a bunch. He used to have his own Knicks podcast, and maybe we'll talk Knicks regularly again someday. But I have to get the Giants talk out of the way. So I am a little out of the loop, as you know, on all things NFL. But I checked in my research for this pod a little while ago and saw that the Giants. This is some advanced statistics, so I don't know how big you are on advanced stats. They have fewer wins than every other team in the league, and that this apparently puts them in the pole position for the draft. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, and there are no ping pong balls in the National Football League, John. So that would, if they do not win another game the rest of the year, the Giants will be selecting first overall in the 2025 NFL draft. That is accurate, and I'm very impressed by your number crunching. Good work.
Thank you. I was at the computer for a while for that one. The only other thing I want to ask you is I also know, because I did my homework. The last 3 times the Giants have had a top 2 pick, they drafted I don't know, maybe the greatest football player of all time, a quarterback who, if he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, he'll get in pretty soon, and a running back who is currently the odds-on favorite to win the Offensive Player in the Year in the NFL. So they have a nice track record when it comes to making these high picks. Because there's been a lot of talk about like Giants ownership and like, is the front office the right front office, and then the coach and the whole thing. Like, how do you think the owners of this team are viewing the opportunity that they could potentially have before them here with what could be a very high pick?
Well, I have no idea what the Mara and Tisch families are thinking in terms of, the general manager and the head coach. They'll make that decision after the year. It's obviously been a bad season. But look, I think they're looking forward to resetting the quarterback position, right? And This isn't last year's quarterback draft where 3 guys went 1, 2, and 3, and they were deserving of that. Not like where you're reaching to pick guys early because you need a quarterback. I don't think this year's class is quite that good. I think this is more, they're good players, but maybe they're not like top pick in the draft good. But I think they're looking forward to trying to get some stability at the quarterback position. And, Daniel Jones did provide stability, but he's hurt a lot. He was in and out of the lineup. So since Eli Manning left, so I think the excitement level for that is really strong. But look, I can tell you, John Mara was in the building this week. He's in the building all the time. They haven't won a home game yet this year, John. So as much important as that draft pick is, I think he's going to want to try to send his as annoying as it might be for Giants fans, some Giant fans, he's going to want to give his season ticket holders hopefully something to cheer about on Sunday against the Colts.
We shall see what happens. I look forward to listening. I'm already looking forward to your post game on the last day of the season, because whatever happens, I just it's Giants, it's Eagles, it's the pick is at stake. It's going to be a fun time.
What I was thinking about, Mac? You're going to laugh. I was thinking the other day. Remember we had like a 6-month debate about how good of a coach Mike Miller was and whether or not the Knicks should pay him a lot of money to stay.
I was just talking about that. I was a guest on a pod earlier today, and we were just talking about like past Knicks stuff. And I remember that Miller era so much because there were a lot of people that were like vehemently in the corner of like, we must retain Mike Miller at all costs. He's the only thing that could fix the culture. Like all of these big name head coaches clearly don't work. We were at that point, John. We were at that point where it was like, is this the answer?
Yeah, and you know what? That is the classic low bar syndrome. We had lived through David Fizdale for so long that anything that looked relatively competent looked like coach of the year material. And that's exactly what that is. If you don't know what good basketball looks like, it's hard to see what special looks like. So I think that kind of brings to a larger point, right? Look, fandom, I get it. And I'm a huge Knicks fan. I'm season ticket holder. Love the team. The amount of complaints that I was hearing just from your post-game pods and some other people around when this team was literally at one point this year the best offense in the history of basketball. Like, do we remember what we've been dealing with here, folks? Like, I get it. The defense wasn't great yet. I get it. But come on. Can we enjoy this? I mean, Merry freaking Christmas. This team's rolling. They're a freaking juggernaut. It's fantastic.
You know, it's funny. I'm just thinking about this now. You know what the difference is, John? The difference is that if they, and again, to be very clear, to be abundantly clear, I'm not saying they would have gotten to this point that they're at now with this great offense and like their top 5 teams had they done what I'm about to like propose as some alternate universe. But had it been the case that they were a team like they are now, 20-10, great, whatever, with RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly, and who am I forgetting? Quentin Grimes. Like we could go Obi, I guess. Obi Toppin. He's on my fantasy team, man. He's balling out there for the Pacers. Just keep winning. Then I think fans would have been a lot more forgiving, but it's because they cashed in the chips. I think that's what it comes down to. When you cash in the chips, it's right. Like. And I that's why I like, and Andrew and me talked about this. I've been open about this. Andrew and me have talked offline about this, about like, if I'm in a place in a post game where I am maybe not feeling some of the frustrations, what am I going to do? Like, those frustrations aren't valid. They are valid. Like, no, we don't tell, like Andrew always says, we don't tell people how to fan. I'm not here to tell anybody how to fan, but at the same time, it's tough to look at this thing now. I mean, do you know how many times? I'll give you a trivia. So 79, this is the 79th Knicks season in history. How many times do you think that they have started 20-10 or better out of those 79 seasons?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I'll give you 3 guesses, and I'll give you higher or lower after each of your guesses.
All right, I'm going to go 18.
Lower.
12.
Higher. What? Last guess.
13.
You got it. 13.
Gave you a little hint there with the cadence.
Very well done. This is the 13th time that they have started at least 20-10. I didn't realize this actually until I looked it up. Their 2 best 30-game starts were both the 2 teams that won the championship. So good starts obviously have meant something to them throughout their franchise history. It's, I don't know. It's a weird place to be right now because it felt like we were, maybe not me and you as much as some other people, but there were so many worries over the course of the year. And then it reached a nadir with that Hawks game. I think that Hawks game for me was the low point, and maybe it was just because of the some of the vitriol on that particular post game. Again, talking about how people react.
It was also the way they lost that game, which I didn't like either, by the way.
It was bad. It was very bad, and it's only been 5 games since then. And it's, the Wolves are supposed to be good. The Spurs are playing above their weight class, but it's not like they've toppled the Cavs or the Celtics or the Thunder or one of those teams in that span of time. And yet, I don't know, man, it's feeling pretty good right now. I think I know the answer, but how are you feeling about things?
Yeah, man, look, 5th best net rating in the league. I mean, they routinely the game's over at the start of the 4th quarter. Just over. I mean, even like with last year's team, one of the common refrains that we got from fans was, the offense is great, but the ball's sticky. There's not enough ball movement. The offense is ugly. Like, we've heard that a million times, right? This is the best offense, Knicks offense, just in terms of aesthetics that I've ever seen. And it's not close. The off-ball movement. Brunson's passing has taken a huge leap this year. Towns and Randall are different types of passers, but I think for this team, Towns has taken the Hartenstein passing, high post stuff from last year and taken it to another level on top of that. And look, it's just, it's aesthetically beautiful. This is how basketball is supposed to be played. And they have 3 guys that score without needing the ball. I mean, the fact that Mikal Bridges is doing what he's doing, he has an 18% usage. That's off the charts. You can look at RJ Barrett's numbers. Yeah. Still more efficient than they were. But look at his usage rate to get to those numbers. Night and day to what you're looking at with Bridges. Anunoby, he doesn't need the ball. Josh Hart doesn't need the ball. And then I think what we're seeing coming around, though, I think I looked before, were they 14th or 15th now in defensive rating? Something like that. So they've kind of moved up a little bit.
I actually didn't check today. I think they're 15th, but Andrew.
NBA.com has them at 14th at 112.7, tied with the Nuggets. All right.
Okay.
So right behind the Sixers. And I think the way that Spurs game ended on Christmas was fitting, right? And I wonder if that's the worm turning a little bit. You miss a couple shots and you grab the offensive rebounds. Guys are diving on the floor. You get those hustle stats, right? You get a couple stops late. They didn't score in the last 2 possessions. They still won the game. And I wonder if it's this group figuring things out a little bit as they kind of play a little bit more, as you've been saying all year, right? And they're figuring out how to tough out some of these wins, even if they're not maybe making those last couple of baskets.
I think a couple of things from how they've been playing recently stand out to me. For one, it's funny because there was so much talk about, from, again, a lot of fans. I miss last year's team, right? Last year's team had a grittiness, a toughness, a no quit attitude in them, and that this team doesn't have. And a big part of the identity of that team last year was what? Offensive rebounds. Well, guess who just had 3 of their best offensive, or actually their 3 best offensive rebounding games of the year in their last 4 games. Yeah. The Spurs game was their best, and the other 2, the Wolves game, and I think the Raptors game. So that's something I really like, because obviously, rebounding is a big deal, and they've been limiting teams on the offensive glass, which is great too. And then the other 2 things, and they kind of go hand in hand. They do go hand in hand. If someone would have told you, John, that Tom Thibodeau, for a 4+ minute stretch in a fourth quarter of a nationally televised massive game, would be sitting unquestionably his 2 best players, including one of which is Jalen Brunson, and that he was going to turn the offense over to a guy who, up until this point in the season, has not had, unless I'm forgetting something, a stretch like that. I know he's had some big scoring games, but a stretch where he was in command like that. I mean, you would have told me that I was crazy, right?
Yeah, and I hope we see him on the ball a little bit more now, right? I think, he can do it. Like, if there's one thing, and it's funny, we talked about doing this for a while. I wish I would have came on 2 weeks ago, and I would have stood on top of the Mikal Bridges, hill with you with a pike, and I would have stood next to you with thwart, like Jon Snow with the horses raining down upon us. And like, now I feel like I'm like jumping on the bandwagon after his 40-point game, to be honest with you. There are texts to prove, by the way, that I was saying this 2 weeks ago.
No, I have the text to prove it. If anybody doesn't believe me, I promise.
He's great. I mean, he moves. His defense has gotten a lot better. I don't know what happened during that one game in 7 or 8 days stretch that they had, during the NBA Cup championship where they had
one game in 8 days. One game in 8 days,
whatever it was. And I don't know if he sat down with Tibbs and watched tape. His screen navigation since then has been so much better. And I was kind of talking to Benji and DJ about this. I thought Benji made a really good point when they did their X's and O's thing last week, maybe it was, end of the week. And Benji goes, look, he was so used to playing in Brooklyn where they switched a lot. And he just wasn't navigating screens correctly. And I had, emailed DJ and I said, look, I feel like he's hitting the screen, then he's trying to push up to get around it, right? Yeah. Instead of anticipating the screen, pushing up. And for those of you that play basketball, and the screen's on this side of me, you got to clear that front full shoulder ahead to get in front of the screen, right? And he was not doing that. He was just hitting the chest of the defender, then trying to squeeze up. And that takes too long. It allows separation. His screen navigation has been much better. Trailing behind the guy, he navigates back in front with his long arms. He can contest those shots from behind. His help defense is better again, knocking balls away, strips, couple block shots too. And look, he's now fitting into the exact role that you wanted him to. And, you mentioned last year's team. That team wasn't coming back. Like, Isaiah Hartenstein was gone. If they could have brought him back, they would have. They couldn't. Mm-hmm. He was gone. That was an unrepeatable experiment. Once he was gone, you had to pivot. This was your next best pivot. And I think it's hard to argue that it hasn't, it doesn't look like it's working out. I'm curious to see, John, when the first injury happens and how they adjust to that. Look, it's going to happen. This has been one of the healthiest teams in the league. Guys have not missed games. Something's coming. It always does. Who slides in? Is it Anunoby's elbow that's going to be? Who knows? Whatever it's going to be. How is Thibodeau going to adjust to that? Because I'm always a Tibbs minutes defender like you, but there are some games this year where even I'm rolling my eyes like, dude, like seriously, like 43 minutes in this game, like really? So I think that's one thing that I'm thinking about is when that first, 2-week absence with the hamstring happens or whatever it is, how does Thibodeau adjust to that? And who does he trust to come off the bench to step in for that particular player, whomever it is?
Not to get too nuanced, but like, it's why I'm very curious when Shamet is reintroduced into the rotation, because like the way that Tibbs, like, again, you follow the press conferences as closely as I do. Tibbs has a way of telling you something. If he may not say it directly, but you know what he thinks about a player, kind of what he's thinking long term. And I would be very surprised if Shamet did not work his way back into the rotation in some form or fashion, even if it's 8 minutes a night or something, just to, get him 5 minutes in the first half, 3 minutes in the second half, something like that. Because when the injury comes, it's not that I'm worried about. I mean, obviously, look, if you lose Brunson, it kind of changes the complexion of your team. Although, again, that's what's so encouraging about what we saw from Mikal Bridges on Christmas. Yeah. And obviously what Cat's doing this season speaks for itself. But like, you could slot, literally, maybe not Towns, but like any other starter goes down with an injury, you could slot Deuce McBride in and you're fine, right? You could figure that out. It's the next, okay, well then who slots into Deuce McBride's role? And then there's a trickle down effect.
I think at guard, you're fine, by the way. I'm not worried about guard. It's if Anunoby or Hart goes down, right? Then what do you do? Because those are your bigger wings and rebounding types. And they don't have a ton of depth there.
I did not realize this until I looked on Cleaning the Glass this morning. Hart or OG is their best guy in terms of defensive on-off. He's also their best guy in terms of offensive on-off, which is not something I was like, wow, I did not realize that it had gotten to that point. And obviously you add those two together. He's one of the best on-off guys in the league. Yeah, I don't know. You want to do a quick indispensable rankings?
Let's do it.
Does Brunson has to be number one, right?
Yes. If I had to watch Campaign for 30 minutes a game, I might. And look, he's been gutty, but he drives me nuts a little bit with some of the shots selected sometimes. So it's gotten better. I will say it has gotten better.
Sir, you will not besmirch the name of Cameron Payne on this podcast. I will not stand for it. I will not have it. That's it. As my wife is texting me, what time do you want to eat dinner?
And by the way, I think odds are if someone's going to get into a fight this year, I think Campaign's one on the list. There's been a couple plays where he's done something a little bit like dirty to a bigger guy, and they've gotten upset with him. He kind of just walks away like nothing happened. That's gonna be a problem at some point later this year. I'm just waiting for it to happen.
In terms of getting into a fight, I could see Precious getting into it with somebody.
I mean, Randall's on the team anymore. He was always the easy guy to select. Yeah, and Debo was too, right? He almost got into in that Sixers series.
Oh my God, with Embiid. That's right. How could I forget that? That was a fun moment. Okay, so Brunson won, and this is really where the draft turns. Because I think there's legitimate arguments for OG and Cat. I think most Knicks fans would say OG.
I would say Cat.
You would say Cat, really? Make the case.
I do. I think what makes this engine go is their offense, right? And yes. I think Towns' presence and the way he plays and what he can do drives everything this team does offensively. I could argue is almost as much as Brunson does at this point with the way he draws gravity, cuts to the basket, sets screens. I mean, if you don't have Towns setting screens for Brunson, they're just going to trap him. Like, depending on who's screening him, or they're going to switch him. So I love OG. He might be Defensive Player of the Year, which is why Knicks fans shouldn't be all upset they traded Barrett and quickly for him. He's wonderful. I love OG Anunoby. But I think with the way this team is structured, John, with the offense being what drives everything they do, I think if Towns is out for a long period of time, it becomes difficult. I think you have to lean on Brunson a lot more than you want to. I just think all the space goes away. Think about it. Towns' presence creates cutting space. It creates 3-point space. It creates driving space. And those are the three keys to the Knicks' whole offense. It's driving, it's cutting, and it's kicking out for threes. If you don't have Towns here creating that space, a lot of that stuff goes away. And I wonder, unless Brunson and Bridges are just killing it, isoing outside, I'm not sure, this offense looks anything like it does right now.
You stole my point, and it's funny you mentioned DJ and Benji before. I think it was DJ tweeted out today the cutting frequency and the cutting efficiency of both Anunoby and Bridges this season compared to last season. And it's night and day, and that's all Towns. That's just Towns being on the court. That's the first point in your favor. And I think the other one, and you said it before again, Hartenstein's not on this team anymore. And I don't know where people want to rank Hartenstein as in the league-wide center rankings right now. I know as a defensive center, he's in the top 10. And the fact that they could rely on him defensively, aside from all the other stuff he did to make Brunson's life easier on the offensive end last season after Julius went down and after Anunoby went down, they don't have, again, I'm a believer to some extent in Jericho Sims and Precious, I guess, if you want to throw him in there too. But I don't think there's any way that they would have the defensive backbone, even if you replace Towns with Sims or Precious or whoever, because Mitch is not here yet, that they would be able to prop up the defense enough to offset the dip in the offense. If that's it, man. You have me. Okay. I think I'll come over to your side. That's fine. We
it's
could go
close though.
It's close. I
would say this too. I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry, John.
No, we go Cat 2, OG 3, and unless you want to put someone else at 3, what were you gonna say?
No, OG 3. I'm with the OG 3.
Okay. And 4 becomes an interesting convo now. Has Bridges surpassed Hart, or is maybe there's someone else that you want to throw in there?
No, it's one of those two guys. That's a good question. How would I rank Hart and Bridges?
Just imagine you get imagine your reaction. You either get the news, Josh Hart out for 2 weeks with a calf strain or whatever. I don't know what would keep somebody out for 2 weeks, or Mikal Bridges out for a couple weeks with something. What news would have you more shook? I know my answer, and I don't necessarily like myself for my answer, but I do know my answer.
Yes, I think I'm in the same boat. I want to say Mikal Bridges because I love Bridges and the way he plays, but I think I have to say Josh Hart. He's too much of the team's personality and grit and rebounding.
So that's funny because we went the opposite direction, because I feel bad because I, like you, believe that Josh Hart is the heart and soul of the team, and he's so integral to a lot of what they do that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And yet I think they would morph into something a little different without him, where it would be different. I'm not saying it would be better, but I think they can. I wouldn't want to lose either of those guys, to be very clear, but I would go Mikal 4 and I would go Hart 5.
I feel better about Deuce making up for the things that Bridges does than anyone making up for the things that Hart does. It's
very fair. Okay. But it sounds like those are our tiers, and then Deuce would be 6, and I don't know who you put 7th.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I don't know if those guys even playing the playoffs. So,
well, let me ask you. So, as of right now, so we know who their top 6 are between, because I don't know if I'll get a chance to talk to you before the trade deadline. Between now and the deadline, what's something that's interesting to you in terms of, is the Mitch situation interesting to you? Is there a particular type of player that you are curious if they're someone comes, or a type of player comes up in rumors connected to them? Do you think they'll sit it out? Where's your mind at over the next, I guess, what now, a month and a half?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to think about Mitch. I mean, I think they could use him when he gets back, but then I think you're trying to juggle him in Towns, and that can get dicey. So I don't know how that's going to work. More interesting to me, I think if they were to target somebody, I don't want a 1, 2, or a 3. They got a million guys that can play those spots. So I think you're looking for a guy that can play the 4 maybe a little bit of small ball 5 and shoot a little bit. I think that's what you're looking for, to cover somebody to cover yourself for the OG injury that might happen, right? I think that's what you're looking for. If OG goes out, can you find somebody to step in and, not replace him, obviously, but at least play some of those minutes, that can keep the floor spread a little bit, but it's Precious that no one covers him. I mean, I think what game it was 2 or 3 games ago, and they just were just leaving him standing there wide open all game. Nobody was even 10 feet of him in the game. So I think that's what you would have to target at the trade deadline. My thought is that they're not going to be able to figure anything out. And I think this is what you're looking at heading into the postseason. That's my guess.
You just indirectly made the case for OG as their next most indispensable player, by the way.
I know I did.
No, I agree with you. I would love a hybrid 3-4 that's more 4 than a 3. And, but those, guess what? Everybody wants those players. And if you're a team that has them, you probably don't want to trade them. And if you are going to trade them, you're probably going to be able to get a lot.
Like Harrison Barnes, like your favorite guy, Harrison Barnes would be.
I love me some Harrison Barnes.
Harrison Barnes, that's the guy. They're not getting him, but that's the guy.
I don't want to get off on a whole different conversation, but I think an interesting subplot to this NBA season in terms of the trade deadline and moves being made is you have teams that are not contending for anything this year, but that are doing good, that are interesting, that are fun, that would probably love to get in the playoffs or even just the play-in to give young players some experience and all that stuff. But those teams also have guys, and I'm not just talking about Harrison Barnes. There are probably half a dozen teams I think that fall into this category. It'll be very interesting to see how things go, because if those teams want to make a pretty penny on their assets, they'll be able to do so, because there are these other class of teams, and I'm not saying the Knicks are this, I actually don't think they are, that are different degrees of desperate. And I think it's funny because a lot of people have been saying, the market's going to be tepid because of the second apron and it's going to restrict trades. I don't know, man. It's been a while since I've been as excited for a transaction cycle as I am for this one ahead of the deadline.
I think they'll have to be creative, and I think that's the fun part, right? Nothing's obvious. Or you go get this, go get that. I don't think it's clear, which I think is fun. How about I ask you this question? If there is a structural problem the Knicks have, something deep in their core of either coaching or how their roster is put together that worries you and you think might ultimately hold them back from a long-term run to the NBA Finals, what big picture structural thing do you think will eventually be the thing that holds them back?
Same thing I thought the day they made the Towns trade, which is that they have 2 weak defenders in the starting 5.
And they're the 2 best players.
And they're the 2 best players. And
that's exactly mine. I'm with you.
We said it that day. It's like you have to have both of them on the floor for the majority of the game, and probably at least one of them on the floor for the entire game. And yet that was not true yesterday, which is what made it so interesting. Now, do I think they're going to be playing, significant minutes in the, fourth quarters without Jalen Brunson or Towns on the floor? No, I don't. But that's it. And honestly, it wouldn't be as big a fear for me if Boston didn't exist, which is why I find what Boston's going through over the last couple weeks, and I gotta think it's just boredom or some version of boredom. That what are they 4-4? I think in their last 8 games, and the defense doesn't look good, and whatever they got really run out of the gym by the Sixers in the fourth quarter of that game. But we know what the Celtics are, and we know what the Celtics can do when they're healthy and they give a shit. And if they didn't exist, I might feel differently, but they exist. So how much of it is the Celtics for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. I think you can figure it out against the Cavs. They have smaller guards. I think you can figure that out. I think you'll be okay against Cleveland in terms of that particular problem. But the Celtics hunt matchups. That's all they do. They just run, screen, and roll until they get the matchup they want. They force a double team. They kick out. They hit a 3. That's their offense. That's what they do. And they're really good at it. And if they can get Towns or Brunson in any of those pick and rolls with Tatum or Brown, that's what's going to get you if you're the Knicks. And look, the Knicks still have with Tom Thibodeau's defense, and I think it is fair to say now that this Tom Thibodeau a better offensive coach than the defensive coach, just maybe. with the way they play defense. I was making that case like 3 years ago, dude.
That's a trap.
I was making that case like 3 years ago. But to me, that's the worry. Can a team like the Celtics exploit Brunson and Towns so much that the Knicks give up way too many threes against them because you have to keep collapsing the paint to protect against one of those guys getting driven around by one of their best players? That's why, to me, the Celtics are a worry more so than Cleveland. Because with Cleveland, can I live with Jalen Brunson in front of one of their two guards? Yeah, sure. I can live with that. I can't live with Jalen Brunson in front of Tatum or Brown. I can't do that.
That's the thing. And like, to be clear, I think the Cavs are really good. I think there's a lot of really good teams in the West, but I don't know that there's any other team. I feel like, other than putting Boston aside, if the Knicks go into any series and play at their best or close to their best, I have confidence that they are able to win that series. There is a part of me that still wonders if they play their best against the Celtics, that may still not be enough. And I guess that's the thing that bugs me. The thing with what you just said, though, is like the collapsing the paint and everything. And it brings, the question about, is Tibbs a better offensive coach or defensive coach? I think the most fascinating question, and we're getting ahead of ourselves here because the two, who the hell knows if they're going to meet in the playoffs. But I think the most fascinating question about that matchup would be, how much does Tibbs defer from his ethos, where it's rim protection at all costs? Because it's like I'm thinking about Home Alone because it's Christmas season. It's like at the end of Home Alone, it's like, no, he wants us to go run back through his funhouse. The Celtics want you to sag off of their shooters because when someone drives, or you get a mismatch or whatever. It's like, that's exactly what they want you to do. They just they're so comfortable taking open threes. And I don't think you could give into that, because it could work in a game or a couple of games. Are you going to get him that way 4 games over a 7-game series? I don't know that you are. And that's the tough part.
Yeah, make it make twos. And I do honestly think Towns has been a better rim protector as the season's gone along. I think he's improved at that. I still don't love him some of his decisions in space on some of the drop in pick and roll has not been great still. He's working on that, but I think that's gotten a little bit better too. But I think just as straight up going vertical in the paint and getting his hands straight up has been better. Fewer dumb reach-in fouls, still too many, but fewer. I think that's good. Yeah. We like that. So yeah, look, I'm with you. I think that's what you have to do. And I think when you get there, I don't think you can. And the ironic thing here is that they made this trade to compete with the Celtics, right? That's why they brought in Bridges. That's why they did the Anunoby thing, and they did all that. But it's hard to switch everything against Boston, though, too. So I don't know, how you do that, because you don't want Brunson on an island, you don't want Towns on an island. Though I think he's probably shown he's okay switching on the smaller guys. And he guarded Durant right in the playoffs last year, whatever it was. So he's been okay with that. But I do think that is going to be the ultimate, chess match with Thibodeau and Mazzulo in terms of how that's going to work out in that playoff series.
Look, I mean, I hope we get it.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like the rest of the season, as of right now, I feel pretty good about where things are headed. The injury thing that you mentioned, like at some point, one of these guys is going to get hurt. I mean, it's the odds are just too high that's going to happen. But I don't know, what's something else that we haven't hit on that maybe is you mentioned Mitch before, and you said you did not sound excited necessarily to have him back. I don't want to mischaracterize.
No, I don't know how much I can count on him, right? And until I know a guy's going to be back, and when he comes back, be good. Like, we've seen Mitch come back, and then it's like, all right, a month later, he's in shape, and now he's okay again. So, I don't know if I can count on him. So the rule I've kind of come to working in the NFL for 15 years, the way I have, is unless the guy's out there, you can't count on him. And there's not a whole lot of what if coming back, and especially a long-term thing like that, a big man with the foot, it's hard. How are they going to handle that? Are you going to see Mitch with Towns out there a little bit? I don't know. I think that kind of helps destroy the great offense that we talked about earlier, right? If you have a big guy in there that messes up your spacing, it kind of ruins the whole shebang. So I think that's difficult. Does he just play the 15 minutes that Towns doesn't play? Yeah, I mean, that'd be fine if he does that. I'm not super excited because I don't know when Mitch is going to be back and what player he's going to be when he gets back.
I think the health thing is its own thing, and I think that's what's more driving my suspicion that they may look to try to do something at the deadline involving his contract, I'm going to do something I probably shouldn't do and attempt to make a football analogy here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Might Mitch be the change of pace running back, like the little scat back that you put in there? Just it's a different look. And then inevitably people are like, well, this guy should be playing all the time. But yet when they get the full-time role, it's never usually almost always not as good as you suspect it's going to be. I kind of, because like if you're telling me Mitch could come off the bench and give me, even if it's like 6, like honestly, I'll even go a step further. We've seen him play Towns in three stints per half, right? We see him take him out early, bring him back in, sit him again, and then bring him back in to close the half. I look at Mitch as a guy, okay, great. You're telling me the guy might have conditioning issues. Well, what better situation then would it be for him to come in, play 3 to 4 minutes, go back on the bench, come back in again, play 3 or 4 minutes, go back on the bench. That might not be crazy. And if it helps keeps Towns fresh, like I could talk myself into that. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I could talk myself into it.
No, I think it works. And look, you have to change the way you play, obviously. And I think now the question is when Mitch is on the floor in those spots, you then have to have Brunson on the court so he can do his ISO thing. I think you have to, right?
I have to. I don't. Well, I mean, yes, I do. I was thinking because again, it's like the Spurs game is still fresh in our minds, and like I think you have to have Brunson on the floor for those times.
You know what I'm looking forward to? I'm going to the games. That's probably one of the reasons I'm psyched. I want to see how they play against the Thunder in January. You know, those games against the Thunder last year were not the best. They were a tough matchup for the Knicks. And the one other worry I have still, John, and I like the way they finished the San Antonio game. Look, I like the way the game's been officiated this year. Generally, no one wants to see guys take a million free throws, make guys try and finish at the basket, don't give them all these little touch fouls. I like that. I think, Brunson gets hit an enormous amount of times without any calls sometimes, but I'm not one to complain about officials. But I generally like the strategy from the NBA. Fewer free throws, more free-flowing play. I think that's a good thing. Sure. But I don't like the way the Knicks have reacted to physicality this year. Every time a team has started beating them up a little bit, there's a lot of complaining. And Karl-Anthony Towns starts like, all right, I'm just going to drive right into you. And sometimes it worked like it did against Mo Wagner in that one, Magic game where he got annoyed.
The first Orlando game, yeah.
Exactly. But there are other games like the Hawks game where all of a sudden the Knicks get taken out of what they want to do because other teams go too physical with them. So that's another thing, especially when you get to the playoffs and things get a little chippier. That would be my one criticism of Mikal Bridges is even in a play in the Spur game last night with his loose ball and he kind of half-heartedly went after it because he didn't want to get banged around and dive on the floor. He's not the most physical player, Bridges. He plays more of a finesse game. You can see with him not drawing fouls at the rim and things of that nature. That's just the way he plays now. That's probably also the reason, and I'll do another football analogy. Giant fans used to always complain, Eli Manning, he throws off his back foot all the time. It's terrible. Why does he do it? Well, why do you think he's able to set the NFL record for consecutive games played? Because he sees contact coming and he gets the hell out of there. That's why he never got hurt. Yeah. A couple times early in his career, he got lit up, but otherwise it was like, all right, guys, coming, I'm out, bro. Like I'm going down. Like I'm not getting hit here. And, Bridges is the same deal. He's the Iron Man, just like Eli, right? So I think maybe that's part of the secret sauce that keeps him on the court. But bigger picture, I think and I think Mitch might help with that. Maybe this is something Mitch would be good for in terms of how the Knicks deal with other teams getting overly physical with them.
And I think hand in hand with that is if they go up against a team, and not every team might have this player, but some certainly do, that has a smaller guy that they could put on Towns. And if I was playing the Knicks in the playoffs, I would obviously switch everything because those defenses have worked well against them. Even if it means there's going to be a small on Towns. And if there's a small on Towns, it's like, hey, that's fine. Go to town. We don't think you could do that enough over the course of a 7-game series to make it that it's going to be advantage you as opposed to advantage us. Because
I'm a 90s baby, John, so I'd like to see more post up from him. Like he can do it. He's got a hook shot. I want to see.
I would like to see more. I thought he had. Talking about posting up smalls. I thought he had a couple really nice moves against the guy who's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year, on Christmas. So I'm to be very clear, I'm not saying he can't do it. He's been awesome at it. I just like in that sense, I think Towns has like some Jokic in him. Like Jokic doesn't want to do that now. This year he's done more of that because he's had to. But I think that's kind of like Towns would like to. I think Towns likes playing the way he's playing now, where he's got another guy who could do maybe some more of the heavy lifting, and he has a full real team around him that he doesn't have to do more than he has to do. Is he capable of it? Yeah, he's capable of it. But again, how much is where's his comfort level there? And I don't know the answer to that question.
Do you worry about Towns' straight line drives once you get to the playoffs? Teams have a chance to scout that and anticipate, and he's already not getting a lot of calls on those that he thinks he should get. And in the playoffs, you might get even fewer. Do you worry about, and I think this is, I think you had John Krasinski on over the summer. I used to talk to John on my old Knicks podcast all the time. And he said, look, those straight line drives from Towns, I think you made the joke to him. Something like, those random drives. He goes, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, dude. Here comes the Towns drives. and I can see exactly what he's talking about with those.
I will say this. I think Towns' ability to adjust in games has been pretty good for me so far this year. There have been some moments where it's like, okay, it's a little bit too much of that, especially since, and Benji's been saying this all year, anytime Towns does one of those drives and he misses, it's 5-on-4 the other way. And even sometimes when he makes it, it's 5-on-4 the other way. And it's like an auto 3 in transition from the opposing team. So yeah, I do think that that's a concern. Hopefully the Knicks will be like, and he will be, again, it all comes down to or a lot of it comes down to self-awareness and just being willing to accept the fact that like, hey, this isn't something that even if I can be good at it, and we've seen him be good at it, like maybe not something that we should go to enough. But look, we're talking about first world problems, but that's where they are.
Well, that's what I wanted to make sure we started with. This is like the best offense we've ever seen. The Knicks are great. Be grateful for it. And I know it's not Thanksgiving season. It's Christmas season where it's supposed to be giving gifts, but you can be grateful too. Grateful about how great this is and all the crap all the shit that we had to go through for many, many years, but how fucking bad this team was, John. My God. Enjoy this ride. So let's do that first. And then we're still trying to win a title here, right? Figure out what you need to do to win a title.
To bring it full circle back to Bridges, and I think you could extend this to OG to some extent and Hart to some extent, and even McBride, who like, man, the growth of that guy over the last several years it's like not real.
And I don't know how he does it, considering Tibbs can't develop young players. It's amazing.
He's not good at it. But what I was gonna say is like, it doesn't matter how good your defense is. With the way the rules are today and with shooting the way it is, you can only take away so many things. Yep. So, and think back to the Celtics last year in their playoff run where they kind of steamrolled a lot of people, but it took it was Derek White and Drew Holiday and Al Horford. And when the time came, Kristaps Porzingis making big plays and not just like hitting standstill threes, like making plays, which is why at the end of the day, look, we'll be talking about the Bridges trade probably for decades, but like what he showed you on Christmas was just a reminder of why I think there was more to that trade than just them. Oh, we're going to complete the Nova, 4 and this is what Jalen Brunson wants. So we're going to give. No, I think I think there's more meat on that bone, and now we're starting to see it.
Yeah, and look, keep in mind too, I know that was your all-in trade with the picks, and we've been waiting. I mean, this is the first time, John, I've potted with you where we're not going to end the conversation with saying, so who do you think they should trade all their picks for? Like, we are going to do that for the first time in like 10 years. It's great. If it doesn't work out, you trade Bridges. Like, it's not like he's not a valuable piece that another team is going to want. Like, the Knicks don't have any unmovable pieces here where if you get to the end of this year, hell, I would give it. And when I wrote the Towns trade thing, you guys are kind enough to let me do that for Knicks Film School. One of the reasons I gave for making this trade now is that it takes a year sometimes for you to figure out what's going on with the group. So even if they don't win this year, it gives you data and it gives the coach the ability to figure out, what do we need? Can we keep running it back? Do we need something else? Josh Hart's tradable. Anunoby's tradable. I'm not saying you want to trade these guys, but every single guy in this Knicks team is tradable. The way Towns has played this year, you don't think he's tradable, even at that salary? Of course he is. I think he is. So this is not necessarily the finished product, even though you didn't trade all your picks. These guys are all in their 20s. Like, you don't have Dame Lillard here at 35 trying to figure things out at the tail end of his career. Like, you can still move things around if you get to the end of the year and you feel like you have to. I don't think you are, but that's still an option. Like, this isn't like you're done here.
I agree with you. I think that is a possibility. I don't think you disagree with this. I think their plan, their idealized version is like, okay, this is the group. We're going to give this a 4-year run. And if we win one and you're good. And Boston,
agreed.
To go back to, Pat Riley, even the disease of more, it's like, there's probably going to be a year or a couple of years like where you're going to be able to get them. And like Drew Holiday's not getting any younger. Al Horford, needless to say, he's not getting any younger. And like, yeah, I like Peyton Pritchard as well as the next guy, but he really step in that sort of way. So, and you're fortunate that you're in the East, not saying the East doesn't have really good teams. It does, but you mentioned Dame Lillard. He's obviously not getting any younger. Philly, who the hell knows what's going on there? Cleveland, we'll see. Whereas out West, I mean, this is I'm happy. I'm happy the Knicks are in the conference they're in because again, you want to if you get to a finals from there, shit happens, man. Like anything can happen,
Absolutely. And I'll just say this at the end too. In order to sustain this, having traded all your picks, you have to be able to hit on and develop, late first round, second round picks, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think they're ready to do it now. I don't. But I can't remember his name. Who was the kid they picked out of Duke 2 years ago? Or after you watched him?
Oh, Trevor Keels.
Who was that?
Trevor Keels.
Yes, Trevor Keels. Thank you. Like Pacome Daddier and Tyler Kolek and even Ariel Hukporti, they ain't Trevor Keels. Like I think we've seen enough from all three guys. Where again, maybe not this year because rookies in the NBA generally are bad basketball players. You've said that many times, and you're absolutely correct. But all three of those guys, I believe, John, have it in them to be rotation players in the NBA one day. Between Daddier's size, athleticism, smart shooting, Kolek is a freaking genius with the ball in his hands, passing the basketball. And Hukporti's shown enough of an offensive game and try hard and length and, he's got some hops to him defensively, where I think all three of those guys down the road can become useful players on a team, even if there's only for 12 minutes a game. But they can help you in some way. Can Tyler Kolek be the next Peyton Pritchard in 3 years? Who knows? That's what you hope for. And that's what, if you want to sustain this, that's what you have to do. And I think the early returns, and Tom Thibodeau, for those that didn't note it, I was being extremely sarcastic earlier. He developed players so poorly, you managed to trade them all for, OG Anunoby and, Karl-Anthony Towns. Because trust me, he developed Dante DiVincenzo too. Like he had his best year under Thibodeau. Like period, stop. Like not even close. So
I would argue he developed
and Randall
to a certain extent. Yeah,
1,000%. So he turned that player development into these stars that the Knicks brought in. That's what you're supposed to do, right? So hopefully that can continue with these other young guys. Where down the road is, God forbid you have to let Deuce walk at some point because of money. I don't think you do, but just to throw out a possibility. Hopefully you have guys that in your pipeline that are going to develop into something.
But that's the difference between, like you mentioned, Peyton Pritchard on Boston. Like the Bucks never got their Peyton Pritchard, or maybe they. It's funny, like maybe it was DiVincenzo was the guy that they drafted. They let him go because it just wasn't right. It was he was hurt and it didn't work out there. Anyway,
the Heat have those guys too, right? The Heat have developed all those stupid late round picks to play around Jimmy Butler and those guys. It's a perfect example.
It's the Heat magic. You put on a Heat uniform. It doesn't matter if you were bagging groceries the week before. You suddenly have 45% 3-point shooter in the league. Exactly. John, this was great. I always love talking to you.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's been too long, but we'll do it again certainly this season. Tell the folks at home where they can find you and anything you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. If you got Giant fans in your crew, we do great coverage of the Giants. 2 more games to go here, folks. Every day we're live. Big Blue Kickoff Live, Giants.com, Giants app at 12:30, talking Giants with you. Not so much game stuff. A lot of questions about the draft. I've already probably watched around 30 college players, John, believe it or not, getting ready for the draft in April.
Are you in on Deion's son?
I think he is a good player, but he's not as good as the 3 quarterbacks that were in last year's class at the top. That was Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. But I think he's a good player. And so is Cam Ward, the Miami quarterback. So we got that. We got draft season. That's our draft podcast. That's draft one day a week. You can just find the podcast platform, search for draft season. John Tuttle podcast, same deal. We'll do interviews as we head along here. And then pre and post game on the Fan. Before and after every Giants game for 2 hours. We preview the game. We talk to fans after the game on the phones. Usually they're very happy when we talk to them on the phones. It's a love fest, really, with the way the season's gone. But yeah, check all that out. And even if you live out in Jersey, our last pregame show before the Eagles game, the first week of January, we're going to be at Tommy's Tavern and Tap in Clifton. So you guys should come out and check us out. Watch us do the pregame show live. I think it's going to be Casillas, myself, and I think I might be breaking news here. I'll give it to you. Phil Simms will come out and do that with us. So fans should come out, say hi, take some, meet and greet, take some pictures. And so come out, Tommy's Tavern and Tap. Whenever the Giants play the Eagles, that final road game, we'll be doing the pregame show there live at 11 o'clock on Route 3 in Clifton. So come on out.
That's very cool. I don't know where I am that weekend, but if there's, I'll see if I can.
Not in Clifton, New Jersey, is my guess.
Well, I do have a car. John, you're amazing. Thank you for sharing your Knicks insight, which I know you have to keep bottled in now to a certain extent during football season, but it's almost time to let it out in full. So I'm happy you gave us a little early preview of that, even though the Giants are still in session.
I had to wax poetic about the best team in New York right now in terms of.
Hey, listen, man, you ain't kidding. Although,
thanks, John.
Thank you, John. All right, everybody else, thanks you for checking out another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. You got me coming up on post game for the Magic game on Friday night, and that is the next time you will hear me. GMAC, anything from you?
Yes, pregame pod, noon, Friday, 6-man show, Kevin Tucker. So join me at noon. We will preview Knicks Magic, and then that John will do postgame for not that John. Wait for Giants games, and that one does Knicks games. There you go.
We should switch post-game responsibilities one day. I'll do a Giants post-game and you do the Knicks post-game. Somehow I think you would fare pretty
I was going to say one I think would go just fine. The other would be a fascinating thought exercise.
I do. Do the Giants still have the Thibodeau that they drafted? He's still on the team?
Yes, they do. They have a team.
Devon is still on the team. Absolutely. And he's one of the few guys that's still healthy. So that's
there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Stop blaming Tibbs. See, just the same script. Just
that's
all
the
over
same
again.
thing.
Merry Christmas, by the way, guys. I hope you and your families and John, your two daughters had a very fruitful Christmas morning.
They did. They did well for themselves. They can thank my wife for that. Okay. Thanks everybody for checking out another episode. If you dig the show, you know what to do. Help us out with a rating or a review, and we'll be back with more fun and games before you know it. Peace up.
Schmeelk, tap your mic real quick. So it is working. Okay, just wanted to make sure. There was a little bit of distortion on your mic. I just wanted to make sure that it was on and it was working. Okay, we're good. Continue. Let's go.
I thought Andrew was coming on to talk shit as a Jet fan, and I was going to be like, man.
I'm a what fan?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot you absconded.
Thank you.
Wait, you quit? You quit the Jets?
It's I used my diehard opt-out is what happened. I'm no longer a diehard. I am a casual, go Lions. They can't hurt me if I don't care as much. I've reached the point of apathy. This Aaron Rodgers thing not working out was enough to be like, oh, nothing's going to work out. Got it. So anything that could go wrong will go wrong. I've just simply used my diehard opt-out. That's all. I'm not choosing another team to be a fan of them now. I just get your shit together and then we'll talk. That's where I'm at the moment.
So in other words, the minute the Jets draft a quarterback in this year's draft, you're going to be all back in again. And
No. I'm so serious. They got to go like 9-8 at least for me to get back in.
Wow.
They had a quarterback 2 years ago. I went to the Woodstock that was the first night against the Bills, and 4 plays in, he went down. And then they came back the next year, and he's actually been healthy. And between bad kicks and atrocious losses and Netflix documentaries, it's a disaster again. So as far as I'm concerned,
Netflix for your shitty owner and your shitty team.
Yes, exactly. And Madden ratings, to John Macri's point. I'm at the point, Mr. Schmeelk, that if you want me, earn me. The Kerry Washington line from Scandal. If the Jets want me back, You're gonna have to prove it to me. The Knicks, like we made it through the mid 2000s and the 2010s. They've earned me. They've earned it. The Jets are gonna have to go through that as well. So that's where I'm at. Go Lions.
Yeah, but didn't rooting for Elfrid Payton make the eventual wins that much more sweet?
They made the playoffs with Elfrid Payton. Aaron Rodgers couldn't even win 5 games.